Hi everybody, it's me Sanella. Welcome to the forum 1 Million Women in Power. And the mission and the movement here is all around us coming together to accelerate 1 million women into decision-making positions globally, whether you're in corporate, business, or STEM. The room is powered by Women Empowered Global. You could just head over to the greenhouse above my head and just hop over to the link tree. You'd hear more about what we do. It's a global organization. We empower women through education, career advancement, entrepreneurial programs, and very exciting. Since just Jan 2018, we've grown with a global member base of over 5,000 members and a presence in over 40 countries worldwide, you guys. So really strong, powerful dynamic moving there. And I want to send my heart and love to everybody on stage. Look at the green beans. We have Yolanda, we have Cecile, we have Susie, and we have Brian, we have Lanny, we have Janetta, Stacy, Ella. So lovely to have all of you, and to the wonderful people who have joined us on stage. I see you, Casey, and to everybody down below in the audience. So lovely to have you. Let's ping our friends in, let's ping our colleagues in, our peers, and anybody who can feel impacted and inspired by today's conversation on DEI. So with that, to introduce the topic today, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, some of the associated narratives that come to mind are typically, some of them would be unconscious bias, dealing with that at a policy level, at a microaggression level, at a recruitment level, so many different things. And then another narrative comes to mind, the gender roles. And then, of course, you have stereotyping and how this relates to organization culture as a whole. I want to pull out two really cool quotes I came across. One is by my favorite lady ever, the legacy, the legend, the one and only Maya Angelou. And she says, "It is time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity, there is beauty and there is strength." So that's powerful. And by Bo Young Lee, who says D&I needs to be something that every single employee at the company has a stake in. And I think that's where we really touch on belonging and all of that. So with that, I want to open the stage. I know we have such a wonderful, inclusive, and environment here each week, and what a powerful co-moderator panel here as well from just diverse sectors. And I'm going to be passing the mic around as well to hear everybody's shares. Very quickly, Brian, I do want to open it up with you, my friend, because I did invite you today specifically because I was just so curious to learn more about what you do. And it was just so exciting for me to see you advocating for DEI and male allyship. And I thought we'll bring that content into the 1 million women in power stage as well. So Brian, with that, would you like to give us a quick introduction, why you're here on DEI, allyship, and also allyship in the tech and game industry? Brian, over to you.
Lovely intro. Thank you, Sanella. And again, thank you everyone for having me here. I'm very honored and privileged. So my name is Brian and my pronouns are he, him. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and I immigrated to the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, which is also known as Vancouver, BC in Canada. And I work at Electronic Arts in my 18th year. And Electronic Arts is an established video game developer and publisher in the interactive entertainment space. And what I do there is I'm a circle leader and I'm a product director within our EA Sports game franchises. In addition to what I do as part of my job, I also serve as the board chair for our Global Asian Employee Resource Group. And I'm a co-lead for our Indigenous Solidarity Affinity Group. Formerly, I was a chapter lead for our women's team as well. And so what I do at work is I really serve and empower our teams comprising of technology, folks, art, content, marketing as well, to deliver amazing games, which in turn serves gamers around the world. And outside of work, I also serve on a few leads teams and boards for a few nonprofits to help advocate and uplift and advance the marginalized and underserved communities within the workplace. So I'm really excited to be a part of this room for this hour. I definitely would like to share some thoughts as well about the role of allyship in driving gender equity in the workplace and in the community. I'd also like to hear from all of you on stage. I know Sanela's going to pass the microphone around. And I would encourage anyone who isn't already on stage, please do raise your hand and join us for a really important and would be hopefully an inspiring interactive discussion. And I think given the audience here and just sitting in a few of these rooms in the past weeks, they're all amazing. And I know that most of you will already know a lot about DEI and women empowerment. So really, I'm here to learn from all of you. And hopefully some of the men in the audience here can take some value from all our shares. And I'll just caveat as well, I'm not a professional speaker nor am I a DEI professional. And I'm not an expert in any way in women's studies or anything like that. But what I am is the male leader in the tech industry. I recognize I have a lot of privilege, and I'm actively looking to leverage that privilege to help uplift others around me. Also, what I am is someone who cares deeply about equity, and I personally have experienced marginalization as an immigrant to North America. And I can also very blatantly see gender inequities in the workforce. I'm just working on the immigration piece. When I immigrated from Asia to North America, I did that as an older teenager. And I had to deal with many things like being othered, having to mask and code switch, and deal with emotional attacks based on systemic discrimination and unconscious biases. And it's not equal at all, but there are some parallels to gender inequities. So I guess what I'm also trying to say is I'm also a minority who really found this voice and I guess true calling by helping others. I could talk a bit more about games, but let me pause there and I'll pass the mic back to you, Sanela, and I can cover the games part later on.
Love that. Thank you, Brian. Absolutely. I'm going to pass the mic around the speaker stage. I just want to hear from the rest of the moderators here today because each of you represent a different a different field, a different industry, different experiences, and that's what makes this so much more, the conversation that much more flavorful and exciting as well when we talk about just the variety and diversity and in our experiences and how we relate to this conversation and the narratives. So I'm just gonna perhaps just go popcorn style, you guys. So just feel free to flash your mic, I'll come straight to you. But if I may kick it off by nominating one person to kick off the mic, in the interest of time, Yolanda, do you mind if I come to you first, my love, and just ask you the question? When you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion from the perspective of being a small business advisor, what are your thoughts around that, and how can a small business really embrace the value, and what is that value of adopting DEI practices in the workplace? And as we come to the other speakers, Susie, if you can also maybe pull out some stats or data as it relates to diverse recruitment, because I know you do a lot of work in that realm as well. And I'd love to hear from Stacey with regards to your story and your experience as well. That's something so powerful there. Yolanda, mic is yours.
Thank you, Sanela. I want to remind everyone we're in the Women Empowered Global Room, 1 million women in power. And we're talking about male allyship and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so now that's a great question. One of the things that I do when I'm working with companies is the first thing I ask them to show me on their website, if they have a board or an advisory committee, and I take a look at that board. And that's also one of the things I do, even if we're partnering with other companies and collaborating. The first thing I do is I go to their board, because you can have a statement on your website that says, we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But if I look at your board and I don't see that, showing up in that way, it makes me wonder if that's really what you believe in and really what you're working toward. And sometimes it's that they're working toward it, and then I kind of work with them to say, if you are in the retail space, or if your company is selling products and services, A lot of times before someone purchases from you, I know I do, I go look and see who's involved in your board. And then the second thing I do is make sure that in their policy manual and hiring onboarding process, that they are really putting that into place even in their hiring practices. Because a lot of times we say we want that, and a lot of times we don't even know how to do it. We haven't been at tables where other companies have done it and done it well. So I also connect them with other small business owners and larger companies that are doing it well, so they can see kind of the practices that they put in place. But it's a lot of hard work, and I think people can easily say it, but when they start digging in and seeing how hard it is to do it, they need to really surround themselves with people that have done it very well. And I think the first thing is to make sure your leadership looks that way. One of the things that happened to me, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I'm doing some work for a university, and I was coming into the space that they've given me to use when I'm on campus, and I came in really early, and I see this person almost chasing me down, and I was like, is she okay? And so I turned around, and I said, hey, good morning. Good morning. And she kind of stopped, and I went on in the office. A few minutes later, she walks into the office. She said, who are you? I've never seen you on campus. The entire time I've been at this university, I've only had one person of color, an African-American, teaching the course that I was in. I've never seen you. It just reminded me that representation matters. That when people see themselves, whether it's at a university, on a campus, with the faculty, in a company, they feel like they belong. And I really believe you're going to get more from that person. And I believe your company is going to be richer and fuller and be able to do more work, because you have people that are different from each other that bring something different to the table. So Nella, that's what I wanted to kind of share to start us off. And I am done. Handing the mic over back to you.
Thank you, Yolanda. I love that. And gives us something to think about as well. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, we believe and we embrace in DEI, diversity and inclusion, and go to the boardroom and you look at the representation and the facts speak for themselves. And of course, there are so many different variables, but still, it is a measure of the effort as well. So for common understanding for the rest of the room, I just want to simplify what we mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. You would have seen the title of the room and be like, what? Hang on, what is male allyship? What does it mean? Why is the room title called Driving Equity? What does that mean? Are they talking about stocks? Are they talking about ownership? What are they talking about, right? So let me just simplify this in the context of what we are hopeful to achieve today. Simply put, diversity, looking at a diverse workforce. Yolanda talked about representation, right? And inclusion. What is diversity? Diversity is all about recognizing our individual differences, recognizing that and valuing that, valuing each other for it, right? Let's talk about equity. What's equity about? Equity is different to equality. Equity is impartiality and fairness within an organization, right? And there's a beautiful illustration, which I obviously can't show on the audio platform here, of 3 people overlooking a fence. I think a lot of you would have seen that illustration, and then each of them are given different boxes, and then it narrates the distinction between diversity, equality, and equity. Moving on to inclusion. What do we mean by inclusion? Now that comes to my next question, probing to the speakers. I'm going to pass the mic on this one. When we talk about inclusion, the key buzzword there is belongingness, ensuring that we don't encourage or allow any marginalization in groups, any clusters of people who feel marginalized in the environment, in our workplace. I'm talking about our peers. I'm talking about our colleagues. I'm talking about subordinates. I'm talking about different fractions in our environment, right? So coming back to that point of inclusion and belongingness, I think it's a basic human need. That's why we love. That's why we love. we have friends, we have family. It's about inclusion, right? And Brian will be speaking more to me too as well. But coming before that, I want to move to Cecile. Cecile, I wonder if I can pass you the mic. How important is it for you, Cecile, when you do business contracts and deal with different stakeholders, your businesses and your network groups? How important is this whole idea of feeling belonged when you work with people, with stakeholders? Cecile, mic is yours.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's very important because when I do businesses, usually on the C level now with people of different cultures, it's really important. Like for instance, um, in the past years when I was going to a bar, for example, in San Francisco, and then there were a lot of people working startups and tech, and they would like talk, like say for example, do you think we live in a hologram? Or they will explain you about cryptocurrency and blockchain, which was just then starting. And so, there's already a bias that's considered even if you're not accepting something yet because you're female. And number two, I'm part of the minority also because I'm an Asian. I'm female and I'm an Asian. So there are two factors there. And yeah, I've experienced that as well. And also dealing with the Japanese companies. And most of us are familiar that generally in Japanese companies, they see women as not working really out from home or taking these business leadership roles. And so that was really difficult for me. But then I was thinking, looking back since my childhood, usually I find myself as the only woman in the group, even in the academic settings that we have, because the paths that I took usually take mostly males who are taking these courses, like for example, mathematics and physics, law, and artificial intelligence. And when I went into leadership, I would always be the only woman in the room. And it's initially it was kind of daunting because especially when I was quite very young, because I rose up to the top level at a young age, and being a woman at that, you will feel that you are being discriminated, and they would look down at you because you're a woman. And number two, I was young then, and so I had to work hard, maybe about 100 times or more than my colleagues, men who are older, talking at the Japanese context. Because if you're older in the Japanese context, you have more seniority and you are more respected. So I was facing a lot of issues there, and it was very difficult, and I really have to work hard 24 hours a day, and I have to show that I am at the level of excellence. And in a way, what I could say that as of now, it's still a struggle, but in some settings, men are so used that I'm there, and they try to look for me to help with the team because they know that if I am with the team or I am making some calls or executive decisions, I'm really very helpful because I just do my best. So that's my experience. But this is not that I don't see really a triumph for me either, because I want to uplift other women, not only myself, to go to a certain stage wherein they will have equity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecile. That's beautiful. Just a quick quote before we hand over the mic to the next speaker, please. We're going popcorn style, so please feel free to flash your mic. And to all the audience below as well, I see you. Would love to hear your shares. And hi, Christopher. Lovely to have you join 1 Million Women in Power stage. So a quick quote here is, simply put, diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And belonging is having that voice be heard. And with that, I wonder, popcorn style, I'm just gonna, all right, we have Janetta. Yes, Janetta, mic is yours.
Thanks, Janetta. Yeah, it's been many moons since I last worked in the corporate environment, and I deliberately stepped off it actually at the time that I had Jenny, because of many reasons. And course, a lot of them are to do with the subject that we're sitting in with today. But for me, at the age of 63, and I've mentioned this several times in this room previously, it's when one starts getting marginalized by your age. And I think, Cecile, you're saying in Japan, it's a huge amount of respect to be aged, but the rest of the world and many other parts of the world, ageism is a really big problem. And fortunately for me, I think I generate very young energy, but that was a decision I took. And I decided that I was going to remain young at heart. So as much as there is ageism, there's also the fact that people getting older start buying into the belief system that they are old, decrepit, and not worthy. And yet there's so much wisdom in the generation that is ahead of us that is getting lost. And I think there's a lot of marginalizing that goes on there, and we need to be able to start new conversations where the older generation is respected and their wisdom and experience is very much in the forefront, is all part of this conversation that often gets forgotten. So that's my penny's worth for today.
That is such a good point about ageism. Thank you, Janetta, for bringing that to the front as well. We can't forget that, there are so many different subsets when we talk about diversity and inclusion. It's not just one thing. I remember I was hosting a very, very large global summit, and one of the global CMOs, heading this massive multinational agency, she was being bullied for her accent because she hails from Germany and her accent wasn't as, she's articulate, but she had that accent and the European accent, and it was strong. And she was telling me, Sunela, even at my level, I'm sea level, but I still feel it. I still feel this sense of feeling marginalized. And I was thinking, wow, it could happen at many levels. There's no stereotypical way to look at this conversation, isn't it? So with that, I'd like to, before I get more into male allyship with Brian, and I'm so excited to have Christopher on stage as well, I just want to hear from maybe one or two more co-mods on stage. Lani, perhaps you can give us any data in terms of VCs that apply, the amount of female startups that you can apply for VC level funding. Lani, any insights, any thoughts from you, or even just a share? Lani, over to you.
Okay, so the numbers of women advancing in leadership roles in terms of venture capital are changing. Men still dominate higher tier roles, control decision making, and significantly outearn women. But I just want to quickly share that I am lucky to have the wonderful CEO invest with the firm that built the culture of respect and equal opportunity, where voices of everybody is really being heard. Personally, I have learned the benefit of asking male leaders and mentors for mentorship in my life. I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't had courage to ask for support of male allies. And I think it's because we're in a culture that we acknowledge the men in our lives, sponsored, supported us in different ways, where we show them daily appreciation and where we also encourage them to be better advocates for women, people of color, LGBT, and so on. And we also encourage actually them to be vulnerable and showcase all their emotions. This way, we can support a more wholesome version of manhood and, just being one with them in our environment. So that's it. I'm just lucky where I am right now. Thank you so much, and back to you, Sunela.
Thank you, Lani. That's beautiful. I'm gonna go up to Yolanda, and then the mic is going straight to Susie, and then I come back to Brian and anybody else in the audience. Just feel free to join the conversation. This is for you. And I will move up to Yolanda. Mic is yours.
Yes, I just wanted to add when Ling was talking, I have experienced being in rooms where I was the only African American, the only female, and I saw that over and over in different settings. And I used to ask some of my, they would invite me to these meetings, and I was like, "Do you guys know any more African Americans? I think I'm the only one I see in these meetings, and I hardly ever see women. Do you guys need my help to bring others to the table?" And in their space, they really didn't have relationships that they were comfortable with, that they had built in order to invite them to the table and to be a part. But not only, it's one thing to invite, and I think you mentioned this, it's one thing to invite someone to the table, but it's another thing for them to feel like they're wanted and needed at the table. And so sometimes when we're invited to tables and we don't hardly see any women or people of color, sometimes we have to be that person that invites the next person to the table. And I think if we continue to do that, and also with men that may not know how to even start that process, and those that were close, I've had great male leaders that I've worked with and staff that were great at it, and then some that was like fearful. They didn't want to make a mistake, and so they just didn't do anything. So being able to continue to communicate when we're struggling in certain areas so that others can come alongside of us and kind of help us in that process. So Sanella, that's what I wanted to share. Looking forward to hearing from Susie.
Brilliant. Susie, mic is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies. So before I start my little portion of stats, I just wanted to give a little background about the notable diversity in the workplace stats. So here are a few. So it is predicted by 2044, groups formerly known as quote-unquote minorities will reach the majority status. By 2025, millennials are predicted to make up 75% of the workforce. And a few others is diverse companies actually enjoy 2.3 times higher cash flow per employee. 43% of companies with diverse boards notice higher profits. And the last one here quickly is racially and ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to perform better. And to kind of shift this into our discussion here today, because we're all about women empowerment. So right now, and what is to be expected is women are to be about 47.2% in rising the workforce in 2024 compared to what it was in 2014, which was 46.8%. So our workforce is really increasing by diversity, and by 2024, less than 60% of the U.S. labor force, and once again, this is U.S. labor force, is going to be expected to be defined as white, non-Hispanic. But compared to 1994, it was actually over 75% that actually fell into that category. So despite the fact that actually more women are entering the workforce, one thing that continues to be an issue and definitely needs to be improved on is pay equity. So in 2019, women's wages were 82% of those of male full-time wages. So that's huge, and that's 2019. We are getting a little better, but it's nowhere where we need it to be. And pay disparity is actually worse for Black and Hispanic women. Although Asian women, some of them were actually paid more than their white counterparts. To give an example, so back in 2019, there was a U.S. Bureau of Labor Stats article that was sent out. So white women were paid around $840, which earned about 82% as much as Asians, which were around $1,025. Black women were around $704, which earned around 69%. Hispanic women were around $642, which earned 63%. So that's a huge disparity just amongst just different people of women, right? Different backgrounds of women. So it's a big issue. Even before COVID too, women were actually slow, but not slow, but we were making slow but positive progress in advancing executive positions. So between January 2015 and January 2020, the representation of women in senior VP roles increased from 23% to 28%. And in the C-suite, it grew from 17% to 21%. But we're still being shut out from mid-level management positions. So for every 100 men that are promoted to manager positions, only 85 women are actually promoted. And of that, it's only 58 Black women and 71% Latinas that were actually promoted. So it's a big issue that's going on right now consistently. It's something that we need to work towards to improve every day. So those are just some stats I wanted to share with you today. Back to you, Snella.
Oh my God, you guys, can we just give Susie a mic flash? That was just incredible. Like, you're a statistic. You are like my data queen, the goddess. Thank you so much. Just a very important mic flash there, because it's so important when we talk about justifying the business case and drawing out value propositions. And it's a no-brainer. We obviously need a very increased representation, and we know that, right? Because we think alike. We feel the pain, right? It hurts. It's a really painful thing, but to the masses, to the rest of them, we need data points, we need statistics, we need to substantiate what we're talking about. We need to give evidence, and evidence is the strongest. For me, usually when I want to make change, when I want to make impact, I always go with the numbers, and I'm like, look, guys, we got to make big decisions. We got to make accurate decisions, for high impact, because so you got to pull out these data points. And oh, Susie, thank you so much. I love that. Thank you.
Of course.
Excellent.
Yeah, and anyone that wants to refer back, these are not numbers I just pulled out of nowhere. You can go back and do your own research. McKinsey, Deloitte, Gallup have all provided these stats in the U.S. Census labor. So this is all factual information that you yourself can go ahead and do research on. And one thing I did want to throw in, I forgot to, heads up for anyone in business, companies with greater than 30% female executives were more likely to outperform those with 10 to 30% women executives on their team. So if you want to make money, you know what you need to do.
We're here in red.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely. With that, I just want to do a quick shout out to Melissa as well. Hey, Melissa, lovely to have you. Connecting from UK, you said you're with family. Can we hear your voice? Lovely to have you.
Hey, hello, Vanilla sister. How you doing?
I'm good.
And hi, KBC and Janetta, Brian, and hi everyone. I am in London, on a completely different time zone. I feel like I've been out of Clubhouse for ages, but I'm so glad I can make your rooms, Nella. All the rooms that you run are always so purposeful, have so much power, and draw in the most powerful, I'm going to say, women. And I see you there, Ella. Nice to see you too. So I'm really enjoying listening to what everybody has to say about women in power, in particular this topic, male allyship and driving equity. It is such a fine line. It's also a very important distinction and safe space to create for these conversations. For me, it always begins with listening. And listening deeply to the what's not being said, and then looking for the allies, to be honest. There is a strategy, at least the way I see it, it's a strategy using that feminine energy, using the feminine way of communication to build allyship, because a lot of people are not aware of how discriminatory the systems are in general in the workplace. And it's very natural as human beings, for us to get defensive. And I do say us, because I don't think there's any one of us here who is free of falling into that defense mechanism. That's how we're wired. It's very natural, and we want to be compassionate to that. So in order to find people in the right space and really get the best out of people, so they too are listening to our needs, they too are listening to when we see that there is imbalance in the workplace, when we see that we really need that allyship, we want to be able to find the right path, the path that leads us into that heart connection, so that we can foster and cultivate and nourish, nurture, and amplify the allyship that we are looking for from our male counterparts, so that we can drive equity. And those are just some points I wanted to bring into this conversation. But really, I feel I have so much to learn from all of you here, such incredible human beings with so much information, so much data, so much experience, and so much heart. So thank you, Sanella, for giving me the space to speak. And I'm going to pause my mic now and just take this all in. Thank you, Melissa, and I'm complete.
Thank you, my beautiful sister. So lovely as always to have your presence, and so excited that you joined the 1 Million Women in Power stage today. And with that, I am going to move on to a very important conversation. I want to come back to Brian and then to Christopher. I'd love to hear your share as well on this. Brian, what can men do, or what do men need to do more of in order to drive gender equity? And I'm going to open this up to the audience as well, so we keep it more interactive. This is an open discussion. There's no right and wrong answer. We just love to hear your shares. Brian, I'm coming to you. Mike's yours.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Sonoma. Thank you, everyone. Yolanda, great call out on board diversity. I also look at that too, but it really needs to start from the top for change to really sustain. Also, great shares from Blaney, Cecile, Susie, and Melissa. Before I talk about what men can do more to drive equity, I just want to quickly touch on one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart, which is the games industry. I know Christopher is here as well from the games industry, so maybe you can chime in as well a little bit. But I'll touch on absolutely. Yeah, I would love that. So as I mentioned, I work in the interactive entertainment space, and I've really seen the lows. I've seen misogyny, sexism, things like Gamergate. We mentioned Me Too earlier. I'll touch on that later as well. All the things. And traditionally, our player communities are also very toxic, and mental health is a large struggle within our industry and our player communities. And I mentioned the reach that we have in video games. So 40% of the world are gamers now, which is roughly 3 billion people around the world. And surprising stat is 50% of those 3 billion people are women. And those numbers are rising due to the ubiquity of high-speed internet around the world, much more powerful mobile device processors, and more affordable cell phones. Everyone's heard and seen of the creator economy now, and really the immersion of tech and gamification of almost everything in our lives. Another fun fact here is pre-pandemic, video games have surpassed the North American sports and movie industry combined in both engagement and revenue. And that gap is further widening since the pandemic began last January. So the point I'm trying to make here is games have a very wide reach and unprecedented level. And this is relevant on the topic of representation, because ultimately games are a form of escape where people can be anything that they want in a video game. And marginalized players flock to games because they can be whatever they want without being judged, discriminated against. And really, you can't be what you can't see. We all know that. But we focus a lot on diversity and inclusion within our games. For women, we've built many great features within my company's products. Just for context, my company builds games like The Sims, Apex Legends, FIFA, a bunch of sports games, UFC, NBA, NHL, which is a nice hockey game. And we really focused on things like character customization, empowering our female game characters, and also not hypersexualizing our female characters. So I grew up playing games throughout my childhood, and I know that these entertainment mediums have shaped how I see the world. And I mentioned the reach earlier. It's really shaping how our generation see the world as well. Susie, you mentioned some great stats. We have digital natives, Generation Alpha that's entering the workforce now. And soon they'll be in leadership roles and marketing roles. And we're already seeing shifts in brand marketing, how there's a focus now on environmental and social governance in the workplace, corporate activism, mission-driven organizations. We talked about DEI earlier, and of course the use of social media to do marketing. So one of the reasons I'm here is I just keep seeing all these movements go through these peaks and troughs over the years, from the Me Too movement to various racial equity movements, anti-trans movements, of course. And what really hasn't changed is something Yolanda touched on. Is, we have non-diverse leadership teams on board still. We still have a glass ceiling for women. There's ageism in the workplace, as Janetta said. So we really need to work hard as the majorities in some cases. Really need to work hard to keep that energy sustained and keep driving improvements and ultimately helping everyone do what's right. So I'm an old dog in the games industry. I've seen a lot of things, had a lot of conversations with various people, women in tech and games, especially. And I do see a strong need for us men to do more, especially privileged men in leadership roles. So, as I mentioned, I'm here to learn and advocate and uplift any way I possibly can. I will talk about what men can do, but let me pause there and see if anyone wants to jump in. Christopher, if you want to add on, or anyone else.
I have a question for you, Brian.
Sounds good, yeah. And Yolanda, please.
Okay. One of the things that I've seen, especially in the game industry, one of the universities I work with, they have an esports program, and I had the leader of that program, the professor that told the program, come talk with me, and I asked him how many females are actually in the program and on the competitive teams. Out of all the teams they had, it was only maybe 2 females. Brian, how would you say, how would you recommend really sharing more with females on the road? Because I think a lot of times people only see the person actually playing the games, but not the designers, not the marketing people. So how would you say we would get more women engaged in that, or the leaders really recruiting additional females to be in that space?
It's a wonderful question. And I think a lot of it comes down to stereotypes of what is a gamer. And when I think a lot of people, when they think of gamers, we think of the nerdy male who, sits on the couch in, their parents' basement, and of course, those, absolutely. That is a segment of our gamers for sure. But there are many other people that are gamers too, and we need to start recognizing that. And I guess spotlighting it a lot more, because like I mentioned earlier, we all play games. Most of us have cell phones, and I'm sure most of us who have cell phones have a game in our cell phone, and we probably played it once in a while. So those are what you're really trying to change the narrative of the games industry of what is a gamer, and the fact that games are just ubiquitous now. We have gamification and things like meditation or reading books, cooking. So really, games are everywhere in our lives, and they're only increasing. And I do see that shift happening within the industry. And when it comes to esports, it is a newer portion of our games industry, but it is really, really taking off. It's going through hockey stick growth, and it's what's probably fueling a lot of our meteoric rise in engagements and also revenue. So there's a huge business opportunity there. And for industry, our games industry companies to not recognize that women are also gamers and pushing and promoting more women in games, and especially in the esports space, like that'd be a huge miss for a lot of our companies. So we're creating things at EA in my company called creator first programs. So this is a type of program where we're really I'm trying to think of the right word here. We're really trying to promote and give the spotlight to women creators and minority creators, and really ensuring that all of our creators have a voice and are able to contribute to the wider gaming population. So we're giving a platform ultimately to allow our gamers to do things through our products. But that's a great question, Yolanda. I will touch on it too when I talk more about equity, what men can do as well.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned is that some of the games are created and how women are treated in the games, where they have females sitting at the table, and even some male allies at the table that says, no, we can't do that. So really promoting more of that. Thank you so much, Brian.
Absolutely, and it is a common issue within the tech industry as a whole. You can see now with all this renowned focus on DEI and hiring inclusively, I think we're starting to see the shift. But this is really the beginning, and I mentioned that there's still a lot of work to do. Now on that front, I want to touch on what men can do more. So Sanella mentioned that equality means treating everyone the same, but we all know that equality only makes sense if everyone, men, women, LGBTQ, IA2S+, every ethnicity and all abilities start from the same point, right? But we also know that is not the case. We know that we need to do more to drive equity, and that's acknowledging that not everyone is the same, giving everyone what they need to succeed the same as everyone else. And it's unfortunate because in today's climate, we still have many people who face violence and discrimination and injustice based solely on their gender or ethnic background or disabilities. And in a lot of parts of the world, it also impacts access to education or skill development and experiences. Cecile earlier talked about biases towards women, and also Asian women in the workplace. And Susie shared some very relevant workforce pay equity stats. Lainey also shared stats in the BC space and the importance and need for men to step up more, to support more. And I'll throw in a few more stats too. Asian women in the Americas statistically on average have attained the highest education levels, yet are, again, statistically least likely to be promoted. So for Asian women in the Americas, there's a double glass ceiling. And Susie mentioned Hispanic folks and the pay gap as well. So the Latinas in the Americas are actually the lowest paid segment, which they only earn 57 cents per dollar for what a Caucasian man earns. And when I look at things like board diversity, and I look at Fortune 100, there are only 7 women CEOs. So those are really things that we should be looking at. So thank you, Susie, for highlighting all those amazing stats. We definitely need to continue monitoring those as the men, especially men in leadership roles. And for me, equity really involves shifting the balance of power. And that also means that many men will need to give up some of that power and provide a disproportionate amount of opportunities for women just to level that playing field. And all the men that I've talked to, even myself, I think we all seem to feel that we're doing enough and that we're being great allies and we're actively removing our biases. But we really need to learn and really unpack that. Right? And once you do, it's one of those things, right? When you see it, you can't unsee it. You really start to realize how much of these biases we actually all have. And once we see it, we can truly understand that we need to really see the power that we have and disrupt and dismantle the systems. And these are real systems of oppression. And once we do that, we can really work hard and intentionally pull up women, pull up minority groups, and ensure that all women not only have the opportunities that men receive, but to have more, right? And how really I think about how men need to provide support for women throughout the career life cycle, and not just help women enter the workforce or enter the company. It's what are we doing with women in terms of learning and development, succession planning, putting women through the talent escalator throughout their career life cycle. So it's really a continuous activity for men, and it needs to be actively practiced. I talked about intentionality. Any man in a leadership role really needs to think about how we're both in our teams, how we're supporting our teams, and advocating, really being explicit about it. I talked also about ceding power. So really it's about wherever possible, providing those opportunities, even if, as a man, I have to give up my opportunity. It's the right thing to do. But really ensuring that women have the chance to experience what men have already experienced. And, by doing that, it will also inspire others to do the same. On that note, I also believe that we need to see women as ascending, like it needs to be visible, and we need to spotlight and celebrate it more. And we need to also celebrate men actively encouraging. Right? We've all talked about central brain underrepresented. Let's go a step further and celebrate all of these successes. Make a show of it. Shout from the mountaintops. In my company, our chief operating officer, Laura Lillet, she is the most powerful woman in the games industry. I'm so proud to work for her. One of the last few things I'll say about this is for men in leadership roles, we need to also keep working on developing our empathy and compassion. And doing this just makes us all better humans. It's not even specific to gender equity. It just makes us better people, and that's the right thing to do. And how we can best do that developing empathy and compassion is being cautious of our biases. And think about what our comments and our expressions, what the impact of those are. Are we offending anyone unintentionally? Are we making others feel uncomfortable unintentionally? And really part of that is expanding the box of our thinking. So if something doesn't fit into our box, our mind frame, that doesn't automatically mean it's wrong. Something important as well is we need to understand what's driving what is now being referred to as the Great Resignation. I read some stats earlier about how in August in the US, 4.3 million workers have quit. So they've resigned from their jobs. And the desegregating that number, it's 5.5% of all women in the workforce have resigned. Compared to men, men are about 4%. So there is a gap there in the genders with resignations as well. And part of that is fueled by the fact that there's a childcare crisis due to the pandemic. There's also a skills development crisis and also a burnout crisis. And part of that is due to how women are implicitly expected to adapt to the household and parenting duties much more than men. And it's pronounced, even more pronounced for the marginalized and underserved. So again, for men in leadership roles, it's really about understanding these things, understanding parenting, maternal biases, paying attention to things like school drop-off times, pickup times. You know, if people are taking care of family members, if women have to perform maternal duties, which aren't the same as paternal duties, but they really should be, and creating and normalizing flexible hours for women. And I think normalizing is important. I think that's probably the key here, is we need to really normalize equity. I talked about a few things men can do. A few more practical tips is just really include diverse women or diverse teams, and including women on those teams. And recognizing women's experiences, right? And encouraging women to apply for roles, spotlighting women's talent and business acumen and leadership skills. For men in power, sponsor women, right? Advocate women for leaderships. Generate corporate board support to build women in the talent escalator, right? In the talent pipeline. A huge one is pay women equal or better, right? Well, what's stopping us from doing that as corporations? We'll leverage successful women CEO role models. Right? Bring people in. Start a women's ERG if your company doesn't already have one. Find pathways and opportunities to help inspire more women. Again, men in leadership, join and support women's organizations focusing on pay equity, position equity, and power. This group here, this room, this club, you know, this is a great club for that. And lastly, I would say for men, look for ways to celebrate and affirm the other men who are also building these pipelines. Because I'm not saying men need more spotlight or anything, but for any man that is contributing, let's make sure they're recognized for that, so that they can continue inspiring other men to do the same. All right, I talked a lot there, so I'm going to pause.
It was great. We appreciate you.
Mic drop. I just want to add in something real quick to what Brian said as well, just for pay discrepancies. It would be great if a lot of male allies could also share their salaries, because it does open up more information for people to be aware of how much am I actually getting paid compared to my male counterparts. Here's a great resource for anyone here. I don't know if this is worldwide, but at least here in the US, there's a company called Blind. The website is teamblind.com. It's where a lot of different employees from huge organizations come in, and it's very anonymous. So they share their salaries, their equity for everyone to see. So it minimizes the gap between the pay discrepancies amongst women and men. So if you want to use that resource, I did want to throw that out there. If you want to check out, am I getting paid fairly to the market value or to my counterparts, or am I not getting paid enough? Check out that site. It's really great information.
Absolutely love that. Thank you, Susie, for that really, really important link. So do go check it out. And also, Brian, thank you for dropping all those gems. Very, very valuable nuggets. I made note of quite a few of them. I love how you also said celebrate women and men who celebrate women, and be cautious about biases. And also, another thing you said, what are our intentions and are we hurting someone unintentionally? So to be more conscious about that. And we are in talking today in focus on how can men help drive equity in the workplace as well. That's where we're at right now in this powerful, impactful conversation you're with 1 million women in power, and it's about driving equity. So back to the question on how can men then help drive equity in the workplace? And we just heard from Brian. We have Brian here today. Talking as well, and I see Keith here. Welcome, Keith, and welcome to Christopher. And hey, Dan, lovely to see you here too. And Tony. Christopher, are you ready to share? And then anybody else? We're just doing popcorn style. So even to the audience down below, please feel free to just raise your hand and we're gonna bring you up on stage because we want you to be a part of this powerful conversation. Christopher, are you ready or just let me know?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Over to you.
I apologize, this is the train here in Stockholm, Sweden. The first touch base on what Susan said, it's actually really interesting because looking at Sweden, all people's salaries are actually available to the public, which of course might be something different from a lot of these other countries. And also coming back to the subject, how men can support women, I think a lot of it comes down to two things, which are leading by good example as well as leading with authenticity. Because of course you have a lot of people they are saying, oh, I really support women, I want to help women, etc. And then you have their actions showing something completely different. And I think Brian said a lot of excellent things as well. So I'm not going to repeat too much of it, but I just want to emphasize the importance of leading with good example and lifting each other's up. And I'll keep it short and concise because it's a really hard part to walk and talk at once. I lose my breath up here. I'm Christopher and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Christoph. Absolutely loved having you on stage with us throughout. It's popcorn style, you guys, so just flash your mic. I see Keith, I see Tony, would love to hear your perspectives as well. Keith, I know you do so much work in the Silicon Valley field and you've just returned from Dubai. So lovely to see you join 1 million women in power today, my brother. How are you?
Hey, Sonala, were you inviting me to speak? I know you talked about me being in Dubai. I will go
over to you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see that over almost 10 months of Clubhouse, virtually everybody on stage I have had a direct conversation or connection with. So great to see so many of you. A little bit of background because many know me for different roles. I try to be the same person in Clubhouse no matter what, but whether it's technology or being a person of faith or identifying as an Asian leader. The key thing is that when we get to the point where we just see each other as people, where we don't have to worry about the labels, that's actually what I strive for. So I'll give a few examples of both my corporate life and then my outside corporate life. So some background. I was a mama's boy, so very close to my mother, a product of a tiger dad. And my mother was not a tiger mom, but people heard my history a lot, so I don't want to repeat too much. But anyway, I've always been closer to women than men, even growing up. So that's done a few things in terms of allyship, just being very aware, and I have a very close relationship with my older sister. So born in the United States, parents were immigrants from China to Hong Kong to the US, and of course there's a lot of stereotypes in both being Asian as well as living in the West. And so a lot of this comes from a Western cultural norm. So one thing I'll start off with is in my corporate life, most of the closest bosses I've had have all been very, very strong women. And so they're the ones who took me under their wing. I know there's some other arguments between women and women, but in terms of myself being an Asian male in the US, the ones who really furthered my career were women, white women. And I've always been very aware of that, even in my final corporate job. So as a leader, I've always had a diverse group of leaders that were on my team. Women featured prominently, and I don't want to say it was conscious, because I think when it becomes conscious, it becomes artificial. So something that you just inherently think of people who, when you look for leaders on your team, you want to make sure you have their own skill set. Also being very cognizant of pay structure. And one thing about statistics, again, I only speak from the U.S. as my frame of reference. Not just women are underpaid, underserved communities are paid as well. So to Susie's point, making sure that you have enough information, and that's through building a strong network and feeling like you can reach out to people. A lot of times sites like Glassdoor and others may not be fully accurate, so that's why having great relationships with people like Susie or Brian or myself or others who've had these experiences, we can tell you what the salary ranges are. So my radio show, Silicon Valley Insider, the season I started it because there were no Asian radio show hosts. That's when we reached out. Over 51% of listeners in Silicon Valley happened to be of Asian descent. But what I did notice after I started doing this for the seasons is that the majority of my guests happen to be women in underserved communities, and that is not it's not really conscious. It's just people whose stories are interesting to me, and it's just kind of turned out that way. So whether they're investors or startup founders or C-level executives, if you scroll through the guests on my show, they do have a fair reflection of the diversity of not just the U.S. but of the world. I'm going to pause if anybody has any questions, because I could go on for hours and hours on this, but I don't have hours and hours today.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Does anybody want to chime in? I also want to acknowledge Dan, and hey, William, love to have you, and Tom, love to have you, all of you on stage and down below. Hi, Shama, I see all of you. So lovely to have you, and the people who keep frequenting this room and the stage. Just feel free to flash your mic, and we're going popcorn style, you guys. So remember, you're part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you as well. So we've covered a lot of ground today with a lot of depth and breadth. It's all about driving equity. We went around starting off the conversation with giving definitions, how it relates to our own experiences, and how, in a very simple sense, what it really means. And also we covered on small businesses and how small businesses can adopt and embrace DEI, what type of practices can go in there. So we covered a lot of ground and statistics as well. Moving along, I'm just going to pay attention to any mic flashes that come up. I'm just going around the room. Just feel free. Yes, Dan, I see you flash your mic. Dan, mic is yours.
Hey, thank you so much. Normally I'd come into a room like this and say hello to everybody that I know, but in a room like this, I know a lot of people. So I'll specifically acknowledge Susie, who's been a dear friend of mine for a long time. Congratulations on your anniversary and birthday. It's really great to see you. Those that know me know that I do a lot of work in this space. Everything from having women's empowerment panels to supporting women in the workforce. And as a recruiter, I am on the front lines of being able to really have a direct impact on change. And one of the things that I really am passionate about and focus on is when I got into recruiting, when I would do interviews and we would talk about compensation, the first thing, if you ask, well, what do you want your compensation to be? And men would always say right off the bat what their dream is. But with women, what I noticed was that I would say, what compensation, and I would get what they would settle for. And I would say, no, what do you really want? And then I would get a little bit higher. And it took about 4 times until I got that ideal number. And here's the thing. And I'm not trying to get DEI on everybody, but I think that there's 2 things that are at play there. One is that the systemic oppression that has been created since the United States started has led people to believe that they could only get so much. And that curates this situation where people are afraid to ask what their true value is. So a lot of the work that I'll do is in the seminars I run, I'll talk about, hey, this is exactly how you identify what your position is in your location. And then the second part is that I look at is for Black women, the expectation is 58 to 68 cents on the dollar. For minority women, it's right around the same, and then white women, 82 to 92 cents. So my thing is, well, how do we stop asking for the dollar on the dollar? How do we start asking for the $1.30 on the dollar? How do we utilize the transferable skills to best prepare us for the interviews? How do we get more women in places of power in technology and otherwise? Because with the dispersion of people leaving the workforce, there's a lot that are going into entrepreneurship, but not everybody is going to have that in their front view. So how do we get those people to the positions that they want without having to give up the things like working at home and having better relationships and having more work-life balance? And this all comes into play. So it's one of my passions in life. My wife was the breadwinner in our family for the first 9 years that we were together. I was proud as hell. She kept her last name. She truly is one of my heroes. And Susie's one of my heroes too, but don't tell her that because she'll get a big head. So all these things really come into play when we talk about women's empowerment, because a lot of guys will say it, but the last thing I want to point out is when we talk about women's empowerment, when we talk about advancement, we're not just talking about the workforce. Everything starts at home and with our relationships. The idea of this traditional gendered roles were created by people that wanted to have power, created by white men back at the start of time that wanted to go out and do things. But times have changed. That's old news. That's stale bread. We need to be able to shift focus and understand that marriage is a partnership, relationships are partnerships. And if for it to be 50-50, I may wipe my kid's ass. In fact, I do wipe my kid's ass. It's not my wife's job. It's not my wife's job to go to work and then come home and cook dinner and then take care of the girls. If my wife wants a break, it's my job to take care of my kids because I'm a 50-50 partner in that. So I know it was a little bit long, but this is something I'm really passionate about. If anybody needs any assistance or help, please let me know. One of the things that I've been able to do because of the work that I've done is I'm now making enough money where I'm really focusing on curating seminars that I could run mini master classes specifically for women and minorities that are low cost and are not time sucks, so that we can educate without taking out much money with it. And so thank you for having me in this room. Thank you for everything all of you do. Lonnie, Hella, Susie, Erica, and so many others. I appreciate you. I love you. And please keep reaching for that $1.30.
Thank you, Dan. Absolutely. So we're just going to do popcorn style. I do have a question to pull out, speaking to that point. I want to also focus a little bit on the soft side of really making this transition in culturally in an organization, because a lot of the focus when we talk about DEI, we talk about the hard side, we talk about policy, we talk about structure, but I want to also talk about what are some of those biggest challenges when trying to implement DEI in the workplace? What are those misconceptions that certain groups have about that? Oh, how does this affect me? Where is that resistance stemming from? I mean, we know this kind of stuff, but I want to go a little deeper today, suss it out and expand, because I want to talk about the soft side. What am I talking about? I'm referring to feelings, emotions. If we really want change to prevail, if we really want to make that transition, the hard side alone is just, it could be superficial. That's obviously why we see DEI struggling in some workplaces. It's not rolling out, it's not running down. Why is that? Let's talk about the soft side. What are some measures, or what are your ideas and thoughts around that? This is just an open discussion in this room today, guys. So there are no right and wrong answers. I'm curious, what are some things we can do to affect the soft side of creating this change we want to see in our workplace, and talk about feelings and emotions? We're going popcorn style. Anybody in the room would like to share? Michael?
I see Michael.
Over to you.
Yes, this is Michael. Very big on the women's advocate
I think the best thing that I can recommend or challenge people to do is to take personal ownership. There's people that have the class, there's people that do the things, and they say they support it, but they walk away. And I can say within men, there are plenty of men in high positions that know who the high performers are, but they keep the good old boys club up. And I say you break that by taking ownership, mentoring, pulling people up, physically promoting people, actively doing things daily in the workplace. If you are on Clubhouse, I send 15 of you or 15 people in here something. My favorite podcaster, who's a small business owner, is Natalia Lloyd in the UK. She is doing a lot of things for women in the UK. I want her podcast to get over that threshold so she could start getting sponsorships. Every day, we should be taking a physical, tangible step to advance the ball. So if I'm in this room and I see Susie, and Susie says, hey, I'm here, I'm at A, I want to get to B, and then go to C. And she is able to articulate where she's at, where she wants to be, and how she wants to get there. I should do what I can to go A to B. I'm not going to promise the moon and say everybody should be a hero and take them A to Z. But if a guy or just anybody, girls too, anybody, if anybody is not actively doing it, you're full of shit, and it's fake hype. And this is the diversity stuff, the equity, the inclusion, but the women's stuff has been around long enough. I've worked with 40 of the Fortune 100. I've commercialized $2 billion under my own. I've been on all the magazines and all that crazy bullshit. The best performers in tech that I had for the super user groups and also the consumer groups were women. They were better listeners, which translated to better technical marketing message, which led to better engineering and design teams, which went over to sales and marketing. So there's no bullshit. I worked at Intel. I've worked on the first iPhone. I see women doing every single thing equally as men. My wife is the head of pediatrics at the Cleveland Clinic. Not a lot of 40-year-old women are heads of big major hospital things. So I believe in it, but I think, and I have a daughter, so that's where my fire comes from. I have a young daughter and a Capri, and I'm not going to have some pushover princess rescue me girl. I want my daughter to kick people's ass just like I want my son to do it. So I think if we're not actively asking for help, communicating the help we need, then on the other side doing it, we're not going to go be a hero to everybody, but little things like this. If you know that there's an entrepreneur that has a podcast, here's my little test. I sent it out within the back channel to a handful of people. If you can't go click on an iTunes thing and push the download button, don't push mine. Forget me. Mine doesn't even matter. Go pick the person you like out of there. Go pick any of them. If we can't do little 1-minute things to support each other that make a big collective difference for others, then we're a bunch of fake hype. So that's my challenge. My challenge is, hey, let's get behind each other, support meaningfully, and don't just do this. I signed up, I took the class, and then we're all, let's not be fake hype. Let's get it done. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Michael. Lovely to have you on the 1 Million Women in Power stage. Welcome. We'd love to have you come back. I love how you said, my daughter gives me the fire. I don't want to push over princess rescue me girl. I love that. I don't want that for my daughter either. Yeah. Exactly. I've got a baby girl as well. She's just 10 and she's already taller than me. And I just remind her how beautiful she is, and that she's strong and she's powerful. And I can see that translate in how she, just behaves around groups and crowds, and she's assertive. And gosh, it's so important what we also endorse and speak over our kids, and that culture we create inside the household as well. That makes a big impact. Determining where they arrive and where they reach and how far they go and how they see themselves as they grow up, and the kind of adults they grow up to be and the kind of bosses they grow up to be. right? Because at the end of the day, we have quite a few adults who are grumpy because they say great employees don't leave great companies, they leave bad bosses. So a lot of childhood problems there. Absolutely. I'm going to move quickly to Sandy, and then I'd love to do a little bit of PTR because I really do want to go around the audience.
Ask you politely. I'm going to ask you guys politely, if I did send you that link, if you could share it, if you could support one of the women that's that I've helped in business, click on her podcast, download an episode that you like, and she supports a lot of women over in the UK. And to date, I've been in any magazine, any whatever you can name. You can go check it out on LinkedIn, roll your eyes at Mohammed. But she is the best interview I've ever been part of, and I'm trying to take direct responsibility to help her get from her goal of being a first-year podcaster to now getting to be a second year. And all that is by downloads and engagement. So you don't have to listen to the one I was on. There's probably people you would be way more interested in it, but please go support that, and that would be my to-do today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I celebrate you for the fact that you celebrate another woman, and you're very strongly advocating for that. So thank you for that. I'm just going to also check in with Lewis. Lindsay, I see you on stage. If you have any shares, just flash your mic. I'll bring the mic straight to you. Absolutely. So I've got you on cue. It's locked. Would love to hear your share. I'm just going to quickly go up to Sandy. Sandy's connecting from Japan. Sandy, what time is it over there for you? And go ahead and share, and I'll bring the mic down to Lewis and Lindsay. Sandy, mic is yours.
Thank you, Sanela. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women Power Global 1 Million Women in Power, Male Allyship, and Driving Equity. I'm currently in Taiwan, and I'm from Taiwan. So I was in Tokyo, so I'm traveling this way. Very interested in today's topic, Male Allyship. And here I'd like to share about what I have observed, and also an article is talking about the allyship is about paying attention. And what that means is many men claim to support gender inclusion and equity, especially when I was working in Tokyo. I've been spending over 10 years in Tokyo. Every company is trying to promote gender inclusion and equity, but at the same time, they struggle to see the gender discrimination and harassment in their day-to-day work. So actually, this is all related back to the lack of situational awareness and the key elements of the male gender intelligence. And this is what's happening in the Tokyo work environment. I'm not sure about in other countries, but here I'd like to address that in order to help the situation, perhaps we can actually build some situational awareness and start by educating everybody and to put everyone to be included in the working environment, start to notice their feeling and also the nonverbal language, because sometimes this kind of signal can also be offended at work, which influences the people. Yeah. So actually, and here I collect some today's topic, and I found it really interesting. It's like in 2018, the study actually revealed that 77% of the male didn't see the harassment as a problem, and even the 38% of the female colleagues reporting that experience workplace harassment. So lack of awareness can keep even the well-intentioned to be on both sides that to create a problem about the male allyship and also the female empowerment in our working environment. So back to the topic, to be able to put all the inclusion and the equity at work, everyone should be noticing. And as what Brian was saying, that if a male is actually doing something to encourage the woman leadership and also to encourage the inclusion, then we should be all paying attention to maybe celebrate it or encourage this kind of movement. And that will actually encourage to make a change to our working environment place. And this gradually will turn the whole situation to be more better outcome. And I also wanted to support what the artist Dan was sharing earlier on, and also sorry, I got the name here, and Keith was mentioning all about the good things and the improvement that what we have been seeing in the working place. Adding to what Anissa has been shared, I also like to share one of the interesting and also delighted to see what happened. As one of my workshop that I was in invited to do was actually invited to the high school and we'll be doing like a speech of how women should be included in the future workplace. So actually some corporates started doing this kind of the awareness by putting their seminar and making an effort into the high school education so that the female students to know that in their working place in the future that there are lots of diversity choices and selections ready for them. And for example, engineering or the game sector is no longer just for the male dominant or working place. However, their hearts and open the space to encourage the students to start to think they are also welcome to join and diversify their skills into those fields after their university. So this kind of set it's actually a real figure and you can feel that the corporate trying to do their best to do that. And why they are not doing the seminar in the university is because they say that by saying that will be too late. So they wanted to pass on the message while the student is still in their high school education, so they understand that they have choices they can make. And then they can decide what major they should be doing in their university. And later on, they can have a happy working environment. And this is my speaking. I've done my speaking. Thank you.
I love that, Sandy. Thank you for bringing out that perspective and also just reiterating the necessity to give choice and to go beyond tradition to non-traditional careers. And that's something I highly advocate as well. We have a talk show here in South Asia where we address a lot of those narratives and stigmas associated with some of these non-traditional careers. So thank you so much for that beautiful share and also bringing the cultural diversity and the influence that holds in this conversation here. What a powerful stage today. I'd like to take the talking stick to Keith. Keith, mic is yours.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to have to go really quick, but I wanted to follow up of the share. Thanks, Sandy. A practical tip, which and again, a lot of this should apply globally. One of the things we do in Asian professionals, Asian Business League, and other groups, we train mid-level career folks on how to actually obtain senior executive roles. One of the fastest ways, when I say fastest, one of the most efficient ways is to get mentors and champions. So I won't talk about all the different types of mentorship you can have, but when you're in corporate, find a champion that aligns with you, that wants to take, that has a personal interest in you. And it actually is very helpful when they're nothing like you at all. So I mentioned earlier that for me, my success was propelled by specifically white, powerful women. For whatever reason, they aligned with me, I aligned with them, and they took me up in my career. So when you can find somebody who doesn't look like you, it's very different than you. So if you're a woman, get a male, probably a different ethnicity, if that's possible. And there's some reasons for that. And you can always DM me for that if you want any advice on that. Also, I want to give a shout out to a couple people who might be new to the room, but they're not here in Clubhouse. Amin A, who is a frequent moderator for Asian professionals. Amin just got another new job in tech, but she hosts a lot of her rooms on how to get a tech job, and it's open to everyone. Casey, who's a new friend, UXY, awesome. And then I'm just looking at, I see so many people that we know. Hi, Joelle, how are you? Hi, Lorsa. If I'm not mentioning you, it's probably because I'm not scrolling fast enough, but I love the room, Snella, all the work you've been doing and all the other folks. And so I just wanted to just give a few shout outs, and I will see you all in a little bit.
Thank you, Keith. Love that. Love having you at 1 Million Women in Power. Absolutely. And with that, I am going to bring the mic down to Louise. Let me go to Lindsay. Louise, very excited to hear your share. Over to you.
Hello, it's very good to be here. Thank you so much. And my share is a small share and it's purely anecdotal. I don't have any impressive statistics around it, but it's something that's grown on me over the years. And this knowledge has grown on me over the years. And it worries me slightly. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's very evident that when I'm working with accelerator programs, the women arrive with the worst pictures. They are really bad. But in the accelerator program, Lani's here, so she might be able to have had the same experience or something. But in the accelerator program environment, the women generally arrive with the the worst pictures, but they arrive. The men can sometimes be a bit casual about it. And then when I am training, doing the pitch training, the women are sponges. I think it was Michael who said earlier that they're better listeners. They're absolute sponges. I've seen amazing metamorphoses that have happened amongst women founders. And they use their time so effectively when there's a learning environment. They really take it all in and produce something wonderful afterwards. The men are more casual about attending, listening, doing other things. They're not as respectful as the women, but they seem to be more competitive, and they will ask for help. They will pay for my time if necessary because they want to achieve. The women won't ask for help so much. They use the opportunity to their best advantage, but they don't usually come back for help. And I'm wondering about the home environment that Dan was speaking about beforehand. I'm wondering about how enabling it is. He spoke about his courses that he's offering and that they are going to be affordable and time efficient. And I think already we're bending to a belief that women are going to have less money and less time. And why are we doing that? So I've really got a lot of thoughts around this that I would be going to. But why are the women not asking for help? Is it because there's less disposable income for their businesses? Is it because they are trying to feed their children on that money? Why are they not asking for help? And why are they so pushed for time? In the end, why are we saying we need to invest in them when we're not enabling the environment right from the home up front? So it's almost a bit arse about face, if you don't mind my saying so, that we're saying men push women, men invest in women. Why are we not enabling the women right from the front? And it's simply anecdotal, but I've seen this happen over time. That men have the luxury of the time, the luxury of the money to ask for extra help, and the luxury to be a bit casual along the way, whereas the women use their time as efficiently as they can. They come less empowered, they grow unbelievably, and then they're not supported as much along the way. And I've seen it purely in my pitch coaching. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Louise. I love that you brought a very critical lens into it. And, end of the day, we do want to arrive at a very holistic kind of a discussion. And I love that flavor you just introduced. So this is the question back to the audience. Like I said, this is an open discussion, no right and wrong answers, friends. She said, women don't come back for help. Why are they not asking for help? There are different hypotheses for that. And then Brian also spoke about the childcare crisis. So coming back to that point, women don't come back for help. Why are they not asking for help? Does anybody in the room like to chime in on that? And then I move the mic to Lindsay. Anybody in the audience? We're doing popcorn style.
I would like to answer that. I'm Lindsay.
Lovely. Lindsay, welcome to 1 Million Women in Power. Mic is yours.
Yeah, so I'm Lindsay. I'm currently a female founder. I've been a founder multiple times. I've also been a C-suite executive, and I can most definitely tell you that women ask for help, but have been incredibly burned time and time again. I speak from personal experience and also from my fellow female founder friends, and that's the problem. We've just been burned time and time again. I have stories weekly of things that have happened to me, of experiences that have happened when asking for help. One recently, I spoke to a man. He was going to help me with my website. I was very busy at the time, so I happened to have my husband, who is in tech, be included in on the conversation. So I had eyes on everything. And when it came to a certain conversation, this man privately messaged my husband and said, "Hi, is Lindsay there? Why don't we just talk man to man?" Last week, or a couple weeks ago, I spoke to somebody about doing my social media that I was referred to, and actually happened, it was a referral through my father. And this man showed up on the Zoom call while he was lying in bed. He was an investor and also doing a deal with Miss America to help female equity. And then I spoke about this person to another man who, of course, also claims female equity, and he was also working on a Miss America deal. And his ending remarks to me were, "I hope you are fertile enough to make babies." And this is something that happens weekly to so many women. So why ask for help when this continuously happens? And so since I have the mic, I'll just finish with the point that I wanted to make after answering Louise's question, is that the problem to me with female equity lies within. Because so many people, and not just men, also women, a part of the Female Equity Initiative, we and primarily men, unfortunately, make these declarative statements. It often starts with, "I have a daughter, I have a wife, etc. So therefore, I'm pro women." But the problem with that is what I have observed, and many others as well, is they feel like because of that declarative statement, it therefore rids themselves of any wrongdoing, and they don't realize that subconscious biases that occur and micro granular thoughts, words, behaviors, actions, right, of dissuading women, excluding women, degrading women, it just contributes to the problem. So that's where I see that we're having issues. Is, so many of these men that I talk to, they don't even realize. So I went to bed after that man that was lying in bed on Zoom, talking about women's bodies down to their measurements in the same context of talking about female equity, and he didn't even realize he was doing it, right? So it's something that I bring up a lot, is just encouraging us to look at our subconscious behaviors and how they contribute to the problem.
Lindsay, again, very critical perspective. I love that. Absolutely love that. I love how you said the problem with female equity lies within, and we need to nip it from the bud. What's the root cause and the triggers, the subconscious biases, the microgranular words, thoughts, actions, and you were encouraging us to look within. I love that, and thank you for sharing that. Louise, I saw you flash your mic. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I'd love to comment. I agree with Lindsay on looking within. I know this is a difficult one, but I would like to see that men stop promoting women, and dare I say it, just be quiet and let the women be heard. Because by promoting the women, you are gathering your own momentum and showing how generous you are. So even though it's a wonderful concept, it almost needs to be put on the back burner for the moment, unless it's a person specific, But in terms of not asking for help, what I have found, yes, I ask for help. I know women ask for help, but I sort of hesitate to say this because this could be construed as self-promotion. But what I have seen is that when women need money in order to elicit that help, they seem to be limited, and that's what worries me. Men seem to have more freedom, more disposable income to ask for help, and I love the fact that also that Lindsay spoke about the chapter in bed and didn't realize that disrespect is the type of thing that I would encounter as well, but yet the men would be quite happy to pay for my help. So women just don't seem to have the luxury of time and money, and that really bothers me. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Louise. Just very quickly, I remember when Brian, circling back to him, he did mention the different crises that women face. And, Lindsay, you reiterated that as well with the burnout. And I know personally, when I crossed over from my multinational career to full-time entrepreneurship, I truly felt the burnout whilst I was in corporate and even outside corporate. And also then you have the childcare crisis and how COVID, when that landed, everything just felt, compounded, and there was a crazy compounding effect there. And Women in Power Global, we actually developed an original short film, and we launched it globally around the world on Women's Day, International Women's Day, in fact. So to check out the original short film, just hop over to our link tree, go over to the greenhouse above my head, Women in Power Global, hop over to the link tree account, click on that link and scroll down. You'd see clearly it's mentioned the mom penalty crisis, the mom penalty, childcare crisis, burnout crisis during COVID, the amount of moms, working moms, how they were forced to give up against their will because they just did not have any other choice. A lot of statistics there as well. With that, I'm going to move the mic back up to Yolanda. She's going to reset the room. And I'm just looking out for any more mic flashes. Remember, we'd love to have you a part of the conversation. Yolanda, mic is yours.
Thank you, Sanella. This has been an amazing conversation. Wisdom has been shared. And I really believe as we continue to have these conversations and people are sharing their experiences, because we want the data, we want to look at what's happening, but also hearing the stories of people that have experienced these things is so key to go along with the data and statistics that we have shared today. And I think as we continue these conversations, we're going to continue to grow. And Sanella, one thing I wanted to share, as we are, especially for recruiters and those that are hiring individuals, that what I've run into and I've seen is that we've moved a lot of the recruiting online. They're doing online interviews. Sometimes it's audio interviews. And sometimes we dismiss people based on the way that they sound, whether they have an accent. I remember interviewing for a job over the phone. I was tired, but when I showed up, they did not realize I was African American, and they would not even talk to me. They knew I had the skills and I had the ability and I could do the job. But because of who I wasn't offered that opportunity. And we see that a lot with reviewing of resumes and people's names and their accents, and that we're limiting people having opportunities based on that. And so I think that's a whole nother conversation. We can have it another time, but I wanted to remind everyone we're the Women in Power Global Group. If you have not started following us yet, if you click on the greenhouse above, follow us for other great conversations like we're having today. 1 million women in power. We're doing even things off of Clubhouse. So visit the link in the bio to find out more, get involved. It's not just a Clubhouse conversation, it's a movement. We want to see women in power sitting at the tables that they have not been sitting at in the past. So why don't you join us to help do that? Again, 1 million women in power, Male Allyship, drive equity. Brian, this conversation with you has been great. All the men that have shared, Keith and Christopher, and those that have shared today, it's been great wisdom for us to hear and to see and hear your support. Do we have anyone else with any other comments? We're here every Friday for 90 minutes, and we're getting close to closing out. But if we have anyone else with anything to share, that would be great. Did I see your flash, Tom? Can you flash your mic? Craig?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much for that. I saw this room the hallway because my friend Lainey's in here, and so I instantly felt the duty to come in, and I just wanted to thank Susie as well for bringing me up. I really appreciate it. I recognise that the reason that I'm in the position that I am and the success that I have is because of the women in my life. Whether that's my mum, my sister, my friends, my teachers at school, everyone that has had such a critical part to play in my life have been women. So for me, it's at the very least to do what I I can to uplift women in my life. It's kind of that's just kind of the very least that I can do. What Lindsay shared kind of really hit me, and it really hurt me to hear that those things happen to you, Lindsay. I face kind of different, but I guess certain kind of discriminations that mean that I can relate to your stories in the workplace. Being gay, I've had many people that will trivialize that and use that against me in certain ways, and so my responsibility as a man is not to just ensure that I treat everybody equally with respect, but actually that I speak to my fellow men and friends and colleagues and call them out when they're doing wrong. It's not really good enough for me to just ensure that I'm not being bad or I'm not displaying incorrect behaviours. I've got to call out others, and I think as men we really need to take on much more of that responsibility as well. So I just wanted to share that. Some rather incoherent ramblings, but yeah, this is a real awesome room, and I just wanted to be there to support it. So I will yield the mic there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much for sharing that. We needed to hear that. We were so excited about the men that are in the room. One of the things that's going on this week is Women Entrepreneurship Week. So one thing you can do, even as the weekend, is reach out to a female entrepreneur and just tell them that you see them. If you can purchase something from them, do that. But continue to encourage and support women that are in your life, whether it's in a corporate setting, an entrepreneurship setting. And I think as we all do our part, we're going to see the changes that we want to see. So Sanella, with that, I turn it over to you, and we want to thank everyone for coming and joining us today in this conversation.
Thank you, Yolanda. Love that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you, we do this room every week. So we'd love to have all of you back, especially the newcomers to our room, to our stage, 1 million women in power. This is a mission and this is a movement. We want to empower 1 million women for leadership globally, whether it's women in STEM, corporate, or business. So with that, lots of love. We love you. We'd love to have you back. And get involved, get activated. Don't just be a visitor to this room. Do check out the Greenhouse Above My Head. Go register. It's a free sign-up form to 1 million women in power. For now, this is just the early stages of the movement where we are just creating all the people in the network who want to sign up with the vision. So we could add you to that, and would love to have you there. And with that, we have arrived. The party has ended. We have arrived at our destination. This is a 90-minute room. We start usually at 8 a.m. PST and 11 a.m. EST. And our co-mods on stage, representing different sectors, representing different countries and cultures as well. It's a very inclusive room, diverse expertise. And we have connected speakers from easily 5 to 6 different continents. I want to be mindful that some of them have passed midnight and it's bedtime. So I'd love to respect that as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely love seeing how today's room title has attracted quite a few men into this space, in this conversation. So I just want to acknowledge that. And, in any perfect world, you'd say, well, Sanella, isn't that expected? It's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, until we reach that full circle where everybody understands the value of this proposition, and it's a no-brainer, we need more, women participation, we need equity, we need to drive it. And it's so wonderful to have this conversation with all of you. And do give a follow to all our wonderful, beautiful mods on stage as well. We've had Yolanda, we have Cecile, we have Susie, we have Brian, Lani, Janetta, Erika, of course, Keith, and now we have Amin as well. We were so lovely to have you. And Cassie, Christopher, Phyllis, Tom Lewis, Lindsay, Laura, Craig, Natalia, Joel, and Chef. Lovely having you guys here, first time on the 1 Million Women in Power. Would love to have all of you back and hear your wonderful shares. We change topics every week. And to all of you down below in the audience as well. And with that, Would love to see you next week as well. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. I'm going to close the room in 5. And with that, feel free to just unmute and say bon voyage to everybody, sending love and light across the world.